Get out of here. You don't belong here.
I own this hotel.
The security guard's rough hands grabbed Keisha Wilson's arms as guests in the fancy hotel lobby turned to stare. Their phones came out, recording everything as the well-dressed woman was being dragged toward the golden doors like a common criminal. "Get your hands off me," Keisha said firmly, but the guard didn't listen. Behind her, the front desk manager stood with his arms crossed, a nasty smile on his face. "Ma'am, you need to leave now before we call the police," the manager shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. "We don't allow credit card thieves in this hotel." The whole lobby went silent. A little girl tugged on her mother's dress, asking, "Mommy, why are they being mean to that lady?" But her mother just pulled her closer, not knowing what to say. What nobody in that fancy lobby knew was that this woman being treated like a criminal owned the entire hotel. Her name was on the deed. Her money had paid for every marble tile they stood on. In just 9 minutes, she would fire every single person who was humiliating her right now. But first, she had to survive the next few minutes without losing her cool. 2 hours earlier, the morning sun shone through the big windows of Keisha Wilson's office on the 40th floor. She was the owner of Wilson Hospitality, a company that owned 15 luxury hotels across the country. At 38 years old, she had worked her way up from cleaning hotel rooms to owning an empire worth over $500 million. But today, Keisha wasn't wearing her usual business suits. Instead, she had on simple jeans, sneakers, and a comfortable hoodie. She was planning to visit one of her hotels, the Grand Marina Hotel, without anyone knowing who she was. This was called a mystery visit, and she did it to see how her staff really treated guests when they didn't know the boss was watching. "Mrs. Wilson," said her assistant Marcus over the phone, "are you sure you want to do this alone? Usually you take someone with you on these visits." Keisha laughed as she grabbed her keys. "Marcus, I've been doing this for years. What's the worst that could happen? It's my own hotel." She had no idea how wrong she was about to be. Keisha drove her regular car, not her fancy business car, to the Grand Marina Hotel. It was one of her newest and most expensive hotels, right by the water with a beautiful view. She had spent millions making it perfect, with golden decorations, marble floors, and crystal lights hanging from the ceiling. As she walked through the front doors, Keisha felt proud. Guests were laughing and having good times. The hotel looked amazing, but she was about to discover something terrible happening behind all the pretty decorations. Keisha walked up to the front desk with a smile. She wanted to book a room for the night, just like any regular guest would. This would help her see how her staff treated people. Behind the desk stood James Mitchell, the front desk manager. He was a tall man in his 40s who always kept his blonde hair perfectly neat. When he saw Keisha in her casual clothes, his friendly smile disappeared. "Can I help you?" James asked, but his voice wasn't nice like it should be in a fancy hotel. "Hi, I'd like to book a room for tonight, please," Keisha said cheerfully. James looked her up and down, taking in her hoodie and jeans. His eyes got cold. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I was hoping you might have something available." James said slowly, like he was thinking hard about something. "Our rooms start at $800 per night. Are you sure you can afford that?" Keisha was shocked. She had trained all her staff never to judge guests by how they looked. Rich people sometimes wore casual clothes, and everyone deserved respect no matter what they wore. "Yes, I can afford it," Keisha said calmly. "Here's my credit card." She handed over her black American Express card, the kind that only very wealthy people have. But James barely looked at it. "We'll need to run some checks on this card," he said suspiciously. "Sometimes people try to use stolen cards here." Keisha couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Excuse me? Why would you think my card is stolen?" James called over 2 other staff members, Rachel and David. They whispered together, sometimes looking at Keisha and shaking their heads. "Ma'am," Rachel said with fake sweetness, "we've had problems with fraud lately. We need to be extra careful with certain types of guests." The way she said certain types made it clear what she meant. Keisha felt her heart start beating faster. This wasn't just bad customer service. This was racism happening in her own hotel. At a nearby table, a young woman named Lisa was having coffee with her friend. Lisa worked as a social media influencer and always had her phone ready to record interesting things. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered to her friend. "Look what's happening at the front desk. Are they really treating that woman badly just because of how she's dressed?" Lisa quietly started recording on her phone. She had seen enough unfair treatment of people to know she needed to capture this. On the video, you could hear James saying, "We're going to need to hold on to this credit card while we verify it's real." You can't keep my credit card, Keisha said firmly. That's not how hotels work. But James had already taken the card and was walking toward the safe behind the front desk. Sorry, ma'am. Company policy. Keisha watched in disbelief as her own employee put her credit card in the safe and locked it. In her own hotel, she was being treated like a criminal. This is theft, Keisha said, her voice getting stronger. You can't take someone's credit card and lock it away. If the card is real, you'll get it back, David said with a shrug. If it's stolen, well, then you'll have bigger problems. Other guests were starting to notice the commotion. Some looked uncomfortable while others seemed to be enjoying the drama. Lisa kept recording, making sure to get everything. Keisha took a deep breath. She didn't want to cause a scene, but these employees were going too far. Maybe it was time to tell them who she really was. Listen, she said calmly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My name is Keisha Wilson, and I'm actually the owner of this hotel. The three staff members looked at each other and burst out laughing. Right, James said sarcastically, and I'm the President of the United States. She's obviously lying now, Rachel whispered loudly. First, she tries to use a fake card, and now she's pretending to own the hotel. The real owner is some rich white guy, David added. Everyone knows that. Keisha felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Her own employees didn't even know what she looked like. They had been working in her hotel, getting paid by her company, and they had no idea who their real boss was. I can prove it, Keisha said, pulling out her phone. Let me call my assistant. Oh, now she's going to call her fake assistant, James mocked. This is getting ridiculous. But as Keisha dialed Marcus's number, something in her voice made a few guests start paying closer attention. There was something about the way she carried herself, the confidence in her eyes, that didn't match what the staff was saying about her. More people were gathering around now. Lisa had moved closer with her phone, and other guests were taking out their phones too. The beautiful hotel lobby was turning into the scene of a viral video that would soon be seen by millions of people. Marcus, Keisha said when her assistant answered, I'm at the Grand Marina and I need you to call the hotel right now and verify who I am. While she was on the phone, a security guard named Tom walked over. He was a big man who looked like he could handle any trouble. What's the problem here? Tom asked. This woman is trying to use a stolen credit card, James explained quickly. And now she's pretending to own the hotel. We need her removed. Tom looked at Keisha, taking in her casual clothes and the angry expressions on the front desk staff's faces. Without asking any questions, he made his decision. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me, Tom said, reaching for Keisha's arm. Don't touch me, Keisha said firmly. I'm not doing anything wrong. But Tom grabbed her arm anyway. Just as the front desk phone started ringing, James answered it with a confident smile. Grand Marina Hotel, this is James. What? Who is this? His smile started to fade as he listened to the voice on the other end. His face went pale, and his hands started shaking. Are you sure? James whispered into the phone. But she's wearing jeans. The other staff members noticed James's expression changing. Rachel and David moved closer to hear what was happening. Yes, sir, James said into the phone, his voice getting smaller. I understand. Right away, sir. He hung up the phone and turned to look at Keisha with wide, frightened eyes. Let go of her, he whispered to Tom, the security guard. What? Tom asked, confused. I said, let go of her right now, James shouted. The entire lobby went silent. Even the little girl who had been asking questions earlier stopped talking. Everyone could feel that something big was about to happen. Tom slowly let go of Keisha's arm and stepped back. James walked over to the safe with trembling hands and unlocked it. He pulled out Keisha's credit card like it was made of gold. Mrs. Wilson, James said quietly, I am so sorry. I didn't know. You didn't know what? Keisha asked calmly. You didn't know that you should treat all guests with respect? The other guests were recording everything now. Lisa's live stream had hundreds of people watching, and the numbers kept growing. Ma'am, Rachel tried to say, we were just following procedure. Procedure? Keisha's voice got louder. What procedure tells you to judge people by their clothes? What procedure tells you to take someone's credit card and lock it away? What procedure tells you to call security on a guest who hasn't done anything wrong? David tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The lobby was full of people, and they were all staring at the staff who had just humiliated their own boss. I can explain, James said desperately. Oh, you'll have plenty of time to explain, Keisha said. But not to me. You can explain to your next employer. She pulled out her phone and made another call. Marcus, I need you to contact security immediately. I want all access codes changed for James Mitchell, Rachel Stevens, and David Park in the next 5 minutes. They no longer work for this company. The 3 staff members looked at each other in panic. This was really happening. They were being fired in front of everyone. And Marcus, Keisha continued, call our legal team. I want every security camera recording from the last hour. I want to know if this is the first time something like this has happened, or if there's a pattern. From across the lobby, a woman in a hotel uniform came walking over quickly. Her name was Sarah Robinson, and she was one of the concierge staff. Unlike the front desk team, Sarah had been watching the whole situation with growing horror. Mrs. Wilson, Sarah said respectfully, I am so sorry this happened. This is not who we are. Keisha looked at Sarah carefully. Here was an employee who had recognized the problem and was trying to help fix it. How long have you worked here, Sarah? Keisha asked. 2 years, ma'am. And I have to tell you, this isn't the first time I've seen guests treated badly by the front desk. I've tried to speak up before, but what? Sarah glanced at James, who was glaring at her. But I was told to mind my own business. The lobby was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Lisa's live stream now had thousands of viewers, and people were sharing the video on other social media platforms. The hashtag Justice at Grand Marina was starting to trend. Keisha felt proud that at least one employee had tried to do the right thing, but she was also angry that good employees like Sarah had been silenced while discrimination was allowed to continue. Tom, Keisha said to the security guard, you put your hands on me without asking what was really happening. You made assumptions. Do you understand why that's a problem? Tom looked down at the floor. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, Keisha said, but I'm willing to give you a chance to learn if you're willing to go through proper training on how to treat all guests fairly. Tom nodded quickly. He realized how lucky he was that Mrs. Wilson wasn't firing him too. The guests in the lobby were amazed by what they were seeing. Many of them were taking pictures and videos, but some were also speaking up. That was terrible, said an older woman in a fancy dress. I can't believe they treated you that way. You handled that so well, said a young man. I would have lost my temper. Lisa, who had been recording the whole thing, walked up to Keisha. Mrs. Wilson, I'm a social media influencer, and I've been live streaming this whole situation. Thousands of people are watching right now, and they're all supporting you. Would you like to say something to them? Keisha thought for a moment. This was a chance to turn a terrible situation into something positive. Yes, she said. I would. Lisa held up her phone so Keisha could see the screen. The comments were flooding in faster than she could read them. This is so wrong. Sue them. You're amazing for staying calm. This happens too often. Hello, everyone, Keisha said to the camera. What happened here today is unacceptable, but it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to do better. An opportunity to treat every person with dignity and respect, no matter what they look like or what they're wearing. The comments kept coming, and more people were joining the live stream. As Keisha was talking to Lisa's viewers, her phone rang again. It was Marcus with an update. Mrs. Wilson, Marcus said, I've been looking through the complaint records for the Grand Marina. We've received 17 complaints in the past 6 months about discriminatory treatment at the front desk. All of them were about guests who were Black, Latino, or dressed casually. Keisha felt her anger growing again. This wasn't just one bad day. This was a pattern that had been going on for months. Why wasn't I told about these complaints? She asked. They were all handled by James Mitchell, Marcus explained. He marked them as resolved and said they were just misunderstandings. Now Keisha understood. James hadn't just discriminated against her. He had been covering up discrimination against other guests for months. He had been protecting himself and his staff while letting innocent people suffer. Marcus, I want a full investigation into every complaint, Keisha said, and I want to personally apologize to every guest who was mistreated. James, Rachel, and David were still standing there, listening to their former boss plan their replacement. They looked scared and embarrassed, but it was too late for apologies. Within minutes of Lisa's live stream going viral, local news crews started arriving at the hotel. Reporters with cameras and microphones were setting up outside, and some were coming into the lobby. Mrs. Wilson, called a reporter. Channel 7 News, can you tell us what happened here today? More reporters followed, and soon the elegant hotel lobby looked like a press conference. Keisha realized this story was going to be much bigger than she had expected. "I'll make a statement," she said calmly, "but first, I need to take care of my guests and my employees." She turned to Sarah, who had been watching everything with wide eyes. "Sarah, I'm promoting you to Guest Services Director, effective immediately. Your job is to make sure every single guest in this hotel feels welcomed and respected. Can you handle that?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Yes, ma'am, absolutely." The guests who were watching started clapping. In the middle of all this drama, they had just seen someone good get rewarded for doing the right thing. Keisha looked at her watch. It had been exactly 9 minutes since Marcus had called to verify her identity. In those 9 minutes, she had fired 3 employees, promoted 1, started an investigation, and turned a moment of humiliation into a lesson about justice. But she wasn't done yet. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the crowded lobby, "what happened here today will never happen again, not in this hotel and not in any hotel I own." She turned to the cameras that were now recording her. "To anyone watching this, I want you to know that discrimination has no place in hospitality. When people trust us with their time and money, we have a responsibility to treat them with dignity. Today, my staff failed that test, but this company will learn from this failure." The reporters were scribbling notes and asking questions, but Keisha held up her hand. "I'll answer all your questions, but first I have a hotel to run properly." She walked over to where James, Rachel, and David were still standing. "Your access cards have been deactivated," she told them. "Security will escort you out. You'll receive information about your final paychecks, but your employment with Wilson Hospitality is terminated immediately." As security guards arrived to escort the former employees out, the crowd in the lobby watched in amazement. They had just witnessed a real-life example of justice happening right in front of them. But Keisha's biggest challenges were still ahead of her. The media attention would bring both support and criticism. Other hotels in her company might have the same problems, and she would have to prove that this wasn't just about firing a few people, it was about changing an entire culture. As the former employees walked through the golden doors they had tried to drag her through earlier, Keisha realized that this day would change everything. The question was, would she be able to turn this crisis into real, lasting change? The answers would come in the next few hours, as the story spread across the nation and Keisha faced the biggest test of her leadership career. 3 hours after the lobby incident, Keisha sat in the hotel manager's office, watching her phone buzz nonstop with calls from reporters, other business owners, and even government officials. But the call that made her heart race came from an unexpected source. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Senator Patricia Hayes from the Congressional Committee on Business Ethics," the voice said. "We've been watching the live stream of what happened at your hotel today. We'd like to invite you to testify before Congress about discrimination in the hospitality industry." Keisha nearly dropped her phone. A few hours ago, she was just trying to do a simple mystery visit. Now, Congress wanted to hear from her? "Senator Hayes," Keisha said carefully, "I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not sure I'm ready for something that big." "Mrs. Wilson, your hotel incident has been shared over 2 million times in the past 3 hours. #justice at Grand Marina is the #1 trending topic in the country. Whether you're ready or not, you've become the face of this fight." As Keisha hung up, Marcus burst through the office door with a tablet in his hands. "You need to see this," he said breathlessly. "The video has gone international. It's on news channels in Europe, Asia, everywhere. And Mrs. Wilson, we have a problem." Marcus showed Keisha the tablet screen. It was filled with messages from guests at other Wilson hospitality hotels around the country. "Ever since your video went viral, guests have been coming forward with their own stories," Marcus explained. "Similar incidents at our Chicago hotel, our Miami location, even our flagship hotel in New York." Keisha read message after message. "The same thing happened to me at Wilson, Chicago last month. They made my teenage son wait outside while they verified our reservation. I was told the pool was at capacity, but I saw them let in a white family right after." Her heart sank. This wasn't just about 3 bad employees at one hotel. This was about a disease that had infected her entire company. "How many complaints are we talking about?" Keisha asked. "Across all our properties? over 200 in the past year, all following similar patterns. Keisha felt like the room was spinning. She had built this company to be different, to be better, but somehow she had failed in the most important way possible. "Marcus, cancel all my meetings for the next month," she said firmly. "We're going to visit every single hotel we own, and we're going to fix this." That evening, Keisha called an emergency meeting with her board of directors. These were the people who helped her run the company, and she needed their support for what she was planning to do. The meeting was held over video call, with board members joining from different cities. As their faces appeared on the screen, Keisha could see the worry in their eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Keisha began, "today's incident has shown us that we have a much bigger problem than we thought." Board member Robert Sterling, an older white man in an expensive suit, interrupted her. "Keisha, I think you're overreacting. So you had a few bad employees. Fire them and move on. This media attention will die down in a week." Other board members nodded in agreement, but Keisha shook her head. "Robert, this isn't about bad publicity. This is about our values. If we can't treat our guests fairly, we don't deserve their business." "But think about the money," said another board member, Janet Cross. "If we start firing employees and retraining everyone, it's going to cost millions." "And if we don't," Keisha replied, "it's going to cost us everything." She shared her screen to show them the complaint reports Marcus had gathered. "These numbers don't lie. We've been failing our guests for over a year, and I was too busy looking at profit margins to notice." The room went quiet as the board members read through the complaints. "My God," whispered Dr. Patricia Williams, the only other black member of the board. "How did we let this happen?" But not everyone was ready to support Keisha's plans for change. Robert Sterling's face grew red with anger. "Keisha, you're going to destroy this company over political correctness," he said. "So what if some employees made mistakes? You can't fire everyone." "I'm not firing everyone," Keisha replied calmly. "But I am firing anyone who discriminates against our guests." "This is ridiculous," Robert shouted. "You're overreacting because it happened to you personally." The other board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was getting ugly fast. "Robert," Dr. Williams said firmly, "are you seriously suggesting that discrimination against guests is acceptable?" "I'm saying that business is business," Robert replied. "Sometimes people make judgment calls. It's not always about race." Keisha felt her anger rising, but she kept her voice steady. "Robert, if you can't support treating all guests with dignity and respect, then maybe you don't belong on this board." Robert's eyes went wide. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm giving you a choice," Keisha said. "Support our company's commitment to equality or find another company to invest in." The tension in the virtual meeting room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone waited to see what Robert would do. After a long pause, Robert spoke. "Fine. You want to run this company into the ground with your social justice crusade? Do it without me. I resign." He disconnected from the call, leaving the other board members staring at their screens in shock. While Keisha was dealing with her board, the story was exploding across social media and news channels, but not all the attention was positive. On her personal social media accounts, Keisha was getting thousands of messages. Many were supportive. "You're a hero for standing up to discrimination. This is what real leadership looks like. Thank you for showing that actions have consequences." But others were harsh and cruel. "You're just playing the race card for attention. Those employees were probably just doing their jobs. Stop trying to destroy hardworking people's lives." Some of the negative comments were so mean and filled with hate that Marcus had to help her turn off notifications on her phone. "Don't read those," he advised. "Focus on the people who support what you're doing." But Keisha couldn't ignore them completely. These angry voices represented people who didn't understand why what happened was so wrong. And if she was going to change things, she needed to reach those people too. The next morning, Keisha gathered her remaining board members and top executives for a planning session. They met in the hotel's conference room, surrounded by flip charts and whiteboards. "Here's what we're going to do," Keisha announced. "We're calling it the Dignity Initiative. Every Wilson hospitality property will undergo a complete review of their practices." She walked to the whiteboard and started writing. Phase 1, Immediate Actions. Fire any employee caught discriminating. Retrain all customer-facing staff. Install new complaint systems. Phase 2, Long-term changes. Hire diversity and inclusion experts. Create guest advisory panels. Regular mystery visits by diverse testers. Phase 3, industry leadership. Share our training materials with other hotels. Lobby for industry-wide standards. Annual diversity reports. Dr. Williams raised her hand. This is ambitious, Keisha. Are you sure we can handle all of this? We have to, Keisha replied. Because if we don't, who will? Marcus pulled up a projection showing their hotel locations across the country. I've already started contacting managers at each property. Some are supportive, but others are resistant. What kind of resistance? Keisha asked. The manager in Dallas said, quote, this political correctness stuff is getting out of hand. The manager in Phoenix asked if this was really necessary since the incident only happened in one hotel. Keisha felt her frustration growing. Even some of her own managers didn't understand the seriousness of the situation. Schedule calls with every single manager, she said. If they can't support this initiative, they can find new jobs. 2 days later, Keisha and her team arrived unannounced at their Chicago hotel. Word had spread through the company about what happened in Miami, so the staff was nervous when they saw her walk through the lobby. But Keisha had a plan. She had hired a team of mystery guests, people of different races and backgrounds, who would test how they were treated. She watched from across the lobby as a young black couple approached the front desk. The desk clerk, a woman named Amanda, smiled politely and helped them check in without any problems. Good start. Next, a Latino family with 3 children walked up. Again, Amanda was helpful and kind. But then came the real test. An older black man in casual clothes, jeans, and a simple t-shirt approached the desk. Keisha held her breath. Amanda's smile faded slightly. She looked the man up and down before asking, "Can I help you?" The man explained that he wanted to book a room for his daughter's graduation. Amanda's response made Keisha's heart sink. "Sir, our rooms are quite expensive. Are you sure you want to see our rates?" That was it. The same pattern that had happened to Keisha was happening again. Keisha walked over to the front desk, and Amanda's face went white when she recognized her boss. "Amanda," Keisha said calmly, "why did you assume this gentleman couldn't afford our rooms?" Amanda stammered, trying to find an excuse. I wanted to make sure." "You wanted to make sure of what? That he knew his place?" The lobby started to quiet down as other guests noticed what was happening. Some pulled out their phones, remembering the viral video from a few days earlier. "Amanda, you're fired," Keisha said simply. "Please gather your things and leave." As Amanda walked away in shock, Keisha turned to the mystery guest and apologized. Then she addressed the entire lobby. "Ladies and gentlemen, this hotel is under new management as of today. Every guest will be treated with respect regardless of how they look or what they wear. That's a promise." News of Amanda's firing spread quickly through social media. #Dignity initiatives started trending as people shared their own stories of discrimination in hotels and other businesses. But the story also caught the attention of other hotel companies. Some CEOs called Keisha to offer support, while others criticized her publicly. "Wilson Hospitality is creating a hostile work environment," said Charles Morrison, CEO of a competing hotel chain, in a TV interview. "They're firing employees based on political correctness instead of actual job performance." When reporters asked Keisha to respond, she kept her answer simple. Treating all guests with respect isn't political correctness. It's basic human decency. But the criticism stung. Some business magazines ran articles questioning whether Keisha was overreacting to the situation. Stock prices for Wilson Hospitality dropped as investors worried about the costs of the Dignity Initiative. "Maybe we should slow down," suggested CFO Michael Torres during a meeting. "The market is responding badly to all this change." "The market will catch up," Keisha replied. "We're doing what's right, not what's easy." Meanwhile, back at the Grand Marina Hotel, Sarah Robinson was settling into her new position as Guest Services Director. She had been given a big challenge: make sure every guest felt welcome and respected. Sarah's first action was to meet with every employee in the hotel, from housekeeping to security. She explained the new standards and made it clear that discrimination would not be tolerated. "I know some of you might think Mrs. Wilson is being too harsh," Sarah told the staff. "But I've seen firsthand how discrimination hurts people. We can do better, and we will do better." Some employees were supportive, but others grumbled about the changes. A few even quit rather than adapt to the new standards. But Sarah also discovered something wonderful. Many employees had been uncomfortable with the old way of doing things, but had been afraid to speak up. Now they felt empowered to treat all guests fairly. "Thank you for making these changes," said Maria, one of the housekeeping supervisors. "I always hated seeing guests treated badly, but I didn't think anyone would listen to me." Sarah realized that the discrimination hadn't just hurt guests, it had also hurt employees who wanted to do the right thing. 1 week after the lobby incident, Keisha received a surprise phone call. It was from Lisa, the influencer who had live-streamed the original confrontation. "Mrs. Wilson, I have an idea," Lisa said. "What if we partnered to create a series of videos showing the changes you're making? People could see the real impact of the Dignity Initiative." Keisha was intrigued. "What did you have in mind?" "I want to follow your mystery visits to different hotels, show people what discrimination looks like, but also show them what change looks like. Make it real for viewers who might not understand why this matters." It was a brilliant idea. Instead of just talking about change, they could show it happening in real time. "But Lisa," Keisha warned, "this could get ugly. Some of my employees might not react well to being filmed." "That's exactly why we need to do it," Lisa replied. "People need to see the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." They agreed to start with the Dallas hotel, where the manager had been resistant to the Dignity Initiative. When Keisha and Lisa arrived at the Dallas Wilson Hotel, they were met by manager Jake Williams, no relation to Dr. Patricia Williams. Jake was a tall, intimidating man who had run the hotel his way for 5 years. "Mrs. Wilson," Jake said with barely hidden anger, "I don't appreciate you coming here with cameras to make my staff look bad." "Jake, I'm not here to make anyone look bad," Keisha replied calmly. "I'm here to make sure we're treating our guests fairly." But Jake wasn't backing down. "My hotel has great reviews and high profits. We don't have any problems here." That's when Marcus stepped forward with a tablet full of complaint records. "Jake, in the past year, your hotel has received 31 complaints about discriminatory treatment. You marked all of them as guest misunderstandings without any investigation." Jake's face grew red. "Those weren't real complaints. People just like to complain when they don't get their way." Keisha felt her patience wearing thin. This was exactly the attitude that had allowed discrimination to flourish in her company. "Jake, either you're going to support the changes we're making, or you're going to find a new job. Which is it?" "Fine," Jake snapped. "You want to run this place like some kind of social experiment? Do it without me. I quit." As Jake stormed out of the hotel, some of his staff looked worried. They had been following his lead for years. Now they weren't sure what to do, but Keisha saw this as an opportunity. She gathered all the Dallas hotel employees for an impromptu meeting. "I know this is scary," she told them. "Change always is. But I'm not here to fire everyone. I'm here to help you succeed while treating all guests with dignity." Slowly, hands started going up around the room. "Mrs. Wilson," said a young desk clerk named David, different from the David who had been fired, "I've always wanted to treat guests better, but Jake said it would hurt our efficiency ratings." "What would you do differently?" Keisha asked. "I'd spend more time helping guests instead of rushing them through check-in, and I'd never judge someone based on how they're dressed." Other employees started sharing their own ideas for improvement. Keisha realized that many of them had been held back by bad leadership, not bad intentions. Over the next month, Keisha visited all 15 of her hotels. She fired 12 managers and 47 frontline employees who couldn't or wouldn't adapt to the new standards. But she also promoted 23 employees like Sarah who had been doing the right thing all along. The financial cost was enormous, over $8 million in severance payments, retraining costs, and temporary staffing. Some investors called for her removal as CEO. But something amazing started happening. Guest satisfaction scores began climbing at every hotel. Revenue actually increased as word spread about Wilson Hospitality's commitment to treating everyone fairly. Lisa's video series, called The Dignity Challenge, became a social media phenomenon. Each episode showed real examples of discrimination being confronted and corrected. Millions of viewers were learning to recognize bias they had never noticed before. "You're changing how people think about this issue," Lisa told Keisha during one of their filming sessions. "It's not just about your hotels anymore. Other businesses are starting to examine their own practices." Finally, the day came for Keisha to testify before Congress. She sat at a long table in a room filled with senators, reporters, and cameras broadcasting to the nation. Senator Hayes began with a simple question. "Mrs. Wilson, what did you learn from your experience of discrimination in your own hotel?" Keisha took a deep breath. This was her chance to speak to the entire country. "Senator, I learned that discrimination doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens when good people stay silent, when leaders don't pay attention, and when we assume someone else will solve the problem. She continued, I thought I had built a company based on respect and inclusion, but I had created systems that allowed bias to flourish. The employees who discriminated against me weren't evil people. They were people who had never been taught better. Senator Morrison, who had been critical of Keisha's approach, leaned forward. Mrs. Wilson, don't you think you've gone too far? Firing dozens of employees seems extreme. Senator, Keisha replied firmly, what's extreme is allowing discrimination to continue. Every person who was mistreated at one of my hotels deserved better. Every employee who was afraid to speak up deserved better. And every guest who will never experience discrimination at our hotels in the future deserves the changes we've made. The room erupted in applause from the spectators, and Keisha felt a surge of pride. She had found her voice as a leader and an advocate for change. 6 months after that fateful day in the Grand Marina Hotel lobby, Keisha stood in the same spot where she had been humiliated. But everything was different now. The hotel had been completely retrained and restaffed. Sarah Robinson had become a model for guest services directors at all their properties. The complaint system had been revamped so that every concern was investigated thoroughly. Most importantly, the culture had changed. Employees at Wilson Hospitality now took pride in treating every guest with dignity and respect. But Keisha's work wasn't finished. The Dignity Initiative had spread beyond her company. Other hotel chains had adopted similar programs. Business schools were teaching her case study, and she had been invited to speak at conferences around the world about leadership and social responsibility. As she stood in that lobby, watching guests of all backgrounds being welcomed warmly by her staff, Keisha reflected on the journey. It had been painful, expensive, and exhausting, but it had also been necessary. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. New video just hit 5 million views. The change is spreading. Keisha smiled and put away her phone. She had learned that real change didn't happen overnight. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened when leaders were willing to face uncomfortable truths and do the hard work of making things better. The Grand Marina Hotel was still beautiful, with its golden decorations and marble floors. But now it was also something more important. It was a place where everyone was welcome. And that, Keisha realized, was worth more than all the gold in the world. A year after the incident that changed everything, Keisha received a letter that made her cry tears of joy. It was from a young black girl who had stayed at the Grand Marina Hotel with her family. Dear Mrs. Wilson, the letter read, thank you for making your hotel a place where people like me feel welcome. My mom told me about what happened to you and how you made things better. When I grow up, I want to be a leader like you who stands up for what's right. Keisha framed the letter and hung it in her office, right next to a photo from that day in the lobby when everything changed. In the photo, she could see herself standing calmly while chaos erupted around her. She looked determined and dignified, even in the face of humiliation. That photo reminded her of an important truth. Sometimes the moments that hurt us the most are also the moments that teach us the most about who we really are and who we want to become. The Wilson Hospitality Company had not just survived the crisis, it had thrived. They were now the most respected hotel chain in the industry, known not just for luxury accommodations, but for their commitment to treating every guest with dignity. And Keisha, she had gone from being a successful CEO to being a national symbol of courage and change. But more importantly, she had learned that true success isn't measured just in profits and growth. It's measured in the positive impact you have on other people's lives. As she looked out her office window at the city below, Keisha knew that her work was far from over. There were still companies that needed to learn these lessons, still people fighting discrimination in all its forms, and still children who needed to see leaders who looked like them standing up for what's right. But she also knew that change was possible. She had seen it happen in her own company, in her own industry, and in the hearts and minds of people across the country. The story that began with humiliation in a hotel lobby had become a story of transformation, courage, and hope. And the best part was that it was still being written, one dignified interaction at a time. If you enjoy this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more.